If you've ever experienced a kidney stone, you know the pain is next level. But before you sign up for surgery or shockwave procedure, you need to hear this. Dr. V and I are going to talk to you about kidney stones and why they're not just random and that you might
Right.
dissolve them naturally or prevent them
Mhm.
altogether and what else that means. So we're going to uncover the truth about kidney stones, oxalates, calcification, and is lithotripsy really the best solution or is there a better, more natural way? So
Right, huh?
let's chat. This is a really popular subject. I have had so many people texting or messaging or asking about it. So here we go. Let's jump into it. But before I let you do your thing, I want to point out this really interesting study that I found because one of the best feedback we have is that we need to talk about more studies.
Hmm. All
And
right.
the whole purpose of this is that people think that they can just go get these things lithotripsy, right? And they keep doing them over and over and over again. But this really great study here says, thus, there is no question that there is a risk of injury with shockwave lithotripsy. So this is what we're worried about, right? We don't want to have more and more people hurting themselves and just going back to having these things busted up with shockwave lithotripsy
Mhm.
because that doesn't do anything for the why they're happening in the first place. And that's what we're here for,
And
right?
there it is. Why do they form? Why doesn't anybody think about that? Right? Come on, people.
Exactly.
Right.
I'll
And
never go ahead.
emotionally, I'm always telling people you want to be more rock-like than sponge-like, but not kidney
Ah,
stone rock-like.
exactly.
Right. And so, I mean, ultimately, minerals help us be more rock-like. So we're not going to physically store those emotions, but it's all about balance, right? I mean, every new patient visit, we're doing oral pH.
Yeah.
90% of the people are too acidic, and so then the body's stealing calcium out of the blood, putting it. I'm stealing out of the bones, put it in the blood to try to alkalize the blood, right? That pH cannot change from 7.14. And if the oral pH is very acidic, then the body's going to steal calcium out of the bones, try to alkalize the blood, because if that shifts, enzymatic pathways don't work, and boo, our health we're dead ultimately. It'll kill us.
Yeah.
That's worse than passing a stone.
And well, you bring up a whole other topic, and I think this is important because I don't think people realize that it's the minerals in us that help us balance our pH, right? Our
Yeah, right.
acidity or alkalinity. And we have alkaline ash minerals and we have acid ash minerals.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be getting them in a natural balance. But like you said, if we completely deplete ourselves of one or the other, our body has to rob Peter to pay Paul to keep that balance in the blood perfect.
100%. And so for the listeners, why is pH relevant, right? I mean, you and I, it's second nature because we're checking in on it all the time. But when the system is acidic, pathways work better, our energy is better, our stamina is better, inflammation's down. When the system gets acidic, did I say that right? Alkaline. When our system's alkaline, we're neutral. It should be 7 to 7.4 ultimately. When
In the
we're
blood. In the blood.
in the blood, and urine should not be more than a half a point different. If there's a difference between oral pH and urinary pH, the body's having to work really hard to create energy to balance that. And so that's a lot of where stones can form too. So if you're or somebody that is struggling with stones, you might want to measure your urinary pH once in a while. We can get pH paper at from our offices or from a pharmacy for $5. It's an easy thing to utilize.
Yeah.
So when the system's acidic, then we have sugar cravings. When a person eats sugar, when they get acidic, again, we talk about stealing calcium out of the bones, and then it goes into the blood, goes into the soft tissue, creates joint pains. Ultimately, for this subject, has the potential for setting up kidney stones, right?
Right.
Sugar. And then we have sugar cravings, cave into those sugar cravings, feeds yeast. Yeast sets up leaky gut, and then we're going to have all that inflammation and the brain fog that goes along with that. So none of these are fun things. So let's talk about how to not end up. So then the other thing that you probably also hear a lot is that gals always say, "I'd rather have a baby than pass a kidney stone." That says a
Yeah.
lot to the pain that's
Excruciating.
potentially there.
And to me, that kind of correlates to the level of like attention your body's trying to get you for something that is a much greater problem.
That's
Just
a great. So yeah.
kidney stone, even though it's insanely painful. But what I want to get to towards a little bit the end here is the other things that is a sign that you're on the road to. so that you don't ignore that and just blast it with lithotripsy. You have to understand your body's trying to tell you there's an imbalance, and it's going to show up in a much worse way than a kidney stone, if you can imagine that, if you don't do
Ouch.
right.
I don't want to imagine that. What do I need to do to not have to go there?
Laughing at people with kidney stones is terrible. Gotta laugh sometime. So yeah, I had this question several times last week, and I immediately want to talk about the calcium phosphorus ratio in the body, right? Calcium being an alkaline ash mineral, phosphorus being an acid ash mineral. And if they get out of balance, you get, well, let's say if you have too low phosphorus, for example, you get calcifications, right? You can't hold the calcium in solution anymore. And that's why I'm always wanting people to be aware of whether or not, we don't talk about phosphorus as an essential mineral very much.
Right.
But that's one that I think people really could do well to have a lot more awareness of where they're getting it, whether they're getting enough. If they're living in an area that doesn't have a lot in the soil or the water, you're going to see a higher correlation of all of those problems that are associated with calcification.
Right. And so talk about what that means. If they have those calcifications, that's on the bones, right? Everybody, I had an x-ray, I've got DJD at whatever, C5, C6 or L5. So when the body's laying down bone, it's going to have to take, when the calcium phosphorus ratio is out of whack, it's going to lay down bone in these areas of stress. So if L5, which is the very lowest vertebra in the back, if that's not functioning right, the body's going to lay down extra calcium there. So there's all these little nuances that your body's trying to tell us. And you alluded to it, that the body's putting a lot of attention. If it's that painful, the body's putting a lot of attention. This is a big deal. Something needs to change now.
Right.
This is your body saying, don't wait till you're 50 or till the kids are out of the house or whatever your excuse is for taking care of yourself.
Right.
Do it now.
Well, and that's exactly, I'm going to share one more thing here just to share with everybody why this is so important, because like you said, it goes to where the problem is, where the injury is. And if that injury is in your cardiovascular system or your heart, then you get, the widowmaker, basically, right? That's why
Right.
This is a sign of it. And this is what this meta-analysis showed. And that's why I'll put this in the links below. But a 54% increased risk of kidney stones correlated when people had calcification in their vasculature. So clearly there's the same thing, right? Or some of the same things that are driving this calcification. And it just depends on where it shows up to where, the real problem is. And it's where the weakness is. Right.
So I think we just decided we'll talk about the calcification of the arteries next week.
Yes.
Stay
important.
Tuned.
Yes. Oh, I have some fun things to share on that one. Yeah.
We've had some fun, exciting topics on that, or discussions. So sign up and like us at the bottom.
Yeah. Right.
Play the sales kid so you can get the announcement for next week. So let's talk about the physical signs and symptoms so people learn the early warning signs, right? So some of the muscles that are going to get tense and spastic and weak, if you will, when the kidneys are struggling, the upper trap muscles. How many people raise your hand, right? How many people have tension in those upper traps? Granted, there's several other possibilities. Blood sugar yo-yos can cause tension in that left upper trap, which is also going to potentially lead to kidney stones as well. But so the upper traps, that's a massively common one. The muscle associated with the kidney is the psoas muscle, PSOAS. Psoas muscle attaches to all 5 low back vertebrae and then deep into the hip. It is the primary hip flexor. So that psoas muscle gets compromised when the kidney is struggling. So that's a big one. And then the kidney acupuncture meridian goes down the back of the leg. Think sciatica. Basically, the kidney acupuncture meridian parallels the sciatic nerve. So most sciatic pain is truly a kidney problem at its core. Then there's an ankle stabilizing muscle called the peronei muscles. Those are also
Wait a minute. Let me just
related.
pause you there and repeat that. psoas problems, or which problems?
Yeah. Psoas is a kidney problem. Yes.
Okay. Wow. A lot of tight psoases out there.
Oh, 100%. So
right here.
You can't quite get that in the camera. That's that psoas muscle shortens up when we sit, right? So when we're sitting, that psoas muscle is shortened up. Then you stand up and you do the evolutionary walk, kind of, or you first get out of bed and do that, kind of ratchet up as the Tin Man.
Yeah.
So so that's a sign that there's kidney issues. And so when that psoas muscle is weak chronically or over the long haul, sets up that degeneration of the L5 vertebra in there. And again, it attaches to all 5 low back vertebrae. So it's the most profound low back stabilizing muscle. And so often that is a kidney problem that's setting those conditions up. And that deep hip pain that, when they can't quite point to it because it's deep inside the hip, that is where that psoas muscle attaches. And so it's going to create pain. And that's the early warning sign that, hey, the kidney needs help. Yeah. Drink more water, get your minerals balanced out, get the good fats in there to keep the calcium in the bones instead of in the soft tissue, all of those.
You said something that I think bears repeating, because I've heard this so many times from holistic practitioners, especially traditional Chinese medical practitioners. They say when somebody groans when they get up, ugh, that kidney. It's just been a thing traditionally that they've always said that if you groan when you stand up, and you'll hear people do it all the time.
All the time.
Well, I'll catch myself doing it. I'm like, oh, what's going on? I need to work on my kidneys.
Right. Yeah. My pastor used that line in the sermon yesterday. Oh, yeah. Talking about getting old and I used to laugh at my grandfather for groaning when he gets up. Now I do it,
Your kidneys.
Right, huh? Wow. So we got the physical manifestations: sciatica, low back pain, especially, that pulls when we stand up too fast, upper trap tension, pain or urgency when we pee. That's a slightly different discussion than the kidney stones. Typically, urgency when we pee usually is a sign that there's toxic metals. That's the toxic metals are irritating as they go out the ureter, and so that's often a sign that the body's trying to get rid of those. So arsenic is which is in rice, typically found in rice. Unfortunately, there's virtually no clean rice.
Organic.
Oh, apple. Okay. All right. There we go. And so if you and then the other source of those is nickel. So 33% of the population is nickel sensitive. So the gals that have trouble with different earrings and the posts in the earrings, or you wear a watch or charm bracelet or big cross on the neck that's touching the skin, the body leaches nickel from that over time, and so that's going to be stressful and irritating to the kidney, to the bladder. So that typically is going to manifest as UTIs or frequent UTIs. So the other common food that's a big surprise for people often is coconut. We've talked about this a little bit, but coconut is the most common trigger I see for blood in the urine. So if we've got, if I had a patient that was peeing literally chunks of tissue when he peed, and he was doing bulletproof coffee, so he's doing half quality organic coffee and half coconut oil in it, every day. That's the latest brain hack for the brain. There's value to adding good saturated fat to the coffee, but coconut oil is not that saturated fat because it tends to be very stressful and irritating to the kidney and the bladder. And so his blood and tissue in the urine went away within 24 hours of cutting all that coconut out. Wow. 2 days. I'm like, wow, this is profound. I did the wow. I'm like, this is profound. 2 days later, another gal came in with brown tint, blood tinged urine. And she's like, no, I'm not eating coconut. And she's like, wait a minute, I'm using coconut for my lotion every day. Wow. So she was using coconut oil topically on her skin, and she was having blood tinged urine all the time. So same thing, we had to switch, what she used on her skin. So that's a little bit of a sidebar as we kind of tee up for kidney problems and stones.
Yeah. It's perfect. I mean, because one of the things that I think happens a lot in this space is people discover something's good for them, and then there's like 100 blogs and 100 people talk about how amazing coconut oil is, and so people overdo it, right? There's always that sweet
guilty.
Yeah, we all do. They're like, yeah, that's great, give me more. And there's somewhere between too much and not enough, and this is what we're hoping to help people figure out, is the signs and symptoms that you're on the too much or not enough end of that spectrum for these things. Right.
Yeah. I mean, again, we'll talk about this a lot as we do these, I'm sure. But I mean, I'm very prone to get over, hey, this is good for me, so I'll do way too much and it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
All the time. So yeah. So kidney stones. Go ahead.
Let's talk a little bit about the things that contribute to kidney stone calcification, right? Or formation, right? Okay. We talked about a little bit about phosphorus, and at the end, we're going to go through those things that we think should be in your medicine cabinet at home in case you're having. Okay. Right? So the phosphorus, but also there are other things that contribute to hypercalcemia or high levels of calcium in the blood. And one of
In the
those, like,
blood. That's a key point, though. Make
in the
sure
blood.
in
Yeah.
the blood. We want calcium in the bones. We don't want kidney calcium in the blood.
Right. Which leads me to the two pieces that I think are very important. Essential fatty acids help take the calcium out of the blood and get it into the muscle tissue, so you don't get muscle cramps. You know, when people don't have enough muscle in the tissue, all kinds of bad things can happen. But of course, you also want to get it in the bone, right? You
Yeah, yeah,
vitamin
exactly.
A2, right? So those are
Yep,
the
yep.
two things that I don't think people are getting enough of if they're
Mhm.
having high calcium, because we need to be able to get it out into where we want it in the body. And here's what blows people's minds is I usually remind them the best whole food sources of vitamin K2 are butter, real butter,
Yep,
egg
yep.
yolks, right?
Yeah.
And then sauerkraut is the vegetarian source. That's the best. So
And ghee still does ghee still have that K2 in it, right?
I believe that's a good question. I'd have to
Mhm.
double check on that, but I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
While we're talking. Okay. So there's some of the things that I think people aren't getting enough of to help balance with
Mhm.
it. Sometimes magnesium isn't enough in there to balance it out as well. Uh,
Mhm.
then sometimes people are getting too much of things, right?
Right. So just let's lean into that, because that is such a key point that you made, that the good fats are the thing that really help shift where that calcium deposits. And so if we're not getting enough of those, again, to repeat what you said, if we're not getting enough of those omega-3s, which comes from plant sources, chia seed and flax oil, challenge to get enough that way. Fish is ultimately our best source. Consider avocado if you're an A blood type. And again, those good fats are going to keep the calcium in the bones, so then people don't end up with osteoporosis or kidney stones, because if it's not in the bones, it's in the tissues, in the kidneys or in the arteries.
And
We
ghee
want to
is a
keep it
good
in the bones.
source of K2, by the way.
Yay.
Just
Good.
confirm.
So ghee is clarified butter. See how
Thank you
these
for
work?
clarifying.
And we're
One
some
of the
dad
worst jokes
jokes in
or the
there.
best
Yes.
joke. Because it's clarified butter for those of you who don't know.
So we want to keep the good fats going to keep the calcium in the bones. That's what makes a person's pH alkaline, right? So that's part of why that's such an easy thing to measure and know how we're heading. And so I guess I forgot to mention, if a person's too alkaline, again, overdoing it. If a person's too alkaline,
Yeah.
that's in my world, that's like, ooh, we better check this person for kidney stone possibility.
And again,
So
you could use that with those testing strips to test the saliva and the urine. But what would be
yeah.
some other signs that somebody's too alkaline? My first sign is that they have allergies. Almost
Oh,
always, there's a huge association when they're allergic to every seasonal thing.
okay.
They're overly alkaline. That's just one thing that I found that is a clue, right? It's not
Right, right.
percent that because they have allergies, they're overly alkaline, but that starts me thinking, let's check up on their pH.
So that leads me to think that maybe they're setting up a leaky gut issue with that, right?
Mhm.
Which is chronic inflammation, overreactive immune system,
Yeah.
leaky gut. Uh, for those that are new to this, means that the gut lining, gut barrier is too permeable. Things are absorbing into the bloodstream, triggering inflammation and an immune response that should not have a place, should not be, those large proteins should not be in the bloodstream. So that means that the intestinal lining has been compromised. The glue for the intestinal lining is minerals. Here we go again. See how the cycle just kind of repeats.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
minerals help prevent that leaky gut conundrum that you just described or alluded to as well.
Right.
So
Well,
that's
and
how
then
it all
let's talk
plays out.
about one more thing, and I'm going to just to share the screen one more time, and
Mm-hmm.
that is excessive, because a lot of people go overboard on this one too, vitamin D, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is a study that it was 48 studies actually, so it's meta-analysis over over 19,000 participants, and they were showing long-term vitamin D supplementation resulting in increased risk of hypercalcemia, high, calcium, and also kidney stones, and the risk of kidney stones going up. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't supplement vitamin D, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what it is make sure that you're not doing these insane amounts of vitamin D. These 50,000 international units every day, I think might be a little much, especially
Mm-hmm.
when it's not balanced with the essential fatty acids, the K2, and magnesium. I think that's
Right.
really important to remember.
Right.
Is
Right.
we can dig deeper into that study, but it's just to say that calcium, or the vitamin D, pulls that calcium out of the tissue and into the bloodstream. That's part of what it does, right? To mobilize it.
Right.
Going. And that's why when I hear people talk about cramps in their feet or cramps in their calves at night, one of the things I ask them is, are you taking a vitamin D supplement? Right. Or
So typically, my question when cramps come up is are they cramps at rest or are they cramps with activity? So,
okay.
cramps with activity is going to be more of the stuff that we're relating to with the calcium, magnesium balance and that sort of thing. Calcium, cramps at rest, I lean more into the homocysteine, which
Oh, wow.
subscribe below. So we're going to talk about homocysteine
Yeah, we will.
when we talk about coronary artery next week. That typically means a couple pathways in the liver, sulfation and methylation, aren't working very well. Very, 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 very common problems for people. So we're going to lean into that next week. So along the lines of, we're talking about calcium and it's trigger for kidney stones. The other very common trigger is oxalates, right?
There we
So,
go.
we're talking about the whole conundrum of overdoing it. Oxalates are typically oxalate type kidney stones are typically my patients that are health enthusiasts, right? Because the high oxalate foods are the things that most of us are going to pursue to be healthy, right? It's almonds, it's beets, right? It's
Huh?
kale. It's the stuff that we intellectually should be pursuing, and we get too carried away on those, then that can create an oxalate stone, and that's the spiky ones. Those are painful.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And again, it's back to that too much versus not enough thing, right? There is too much kale. There's a point where you do too much.
How
And
could that be?
you have to balance all these things. Yeah. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding that the oxalates do bind to calcium, though. There has to be some level of calcification first.
Sure.
For
Okay.
that. And there is some level of all of that overconsumption also leading to that calcification as well. So it's a combination of
Right.
those. So what can we do about it? Right. That's what we
Right.
need to get to now.
Balance and moderation. Right. It's balance and moderation.
Yeah, but if you are
So,
having kidney stones, right? If you are starting to see signs of calcification, obviously what we talked about earlier is there's calcification of the coronary artery, which we'll talk to about next week. But you could also form it as calcification in the eyes, like cataracts, right? Or arthritis or bursitis. So how do we turn that around, right? What do we do chemically to help make sure that we can not only stop that from happening, but also dissolve it, reverse it, and go back to abundant health?
right. And so, I mean, your favorite source is fast food, I'm sure.
That's in my cabinet. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, keep
But
that in your
yeah,
medicine
I
cabinet,
got a bottle right here.
huh? Show them what it
Yeah,
looks
come
like,
on, get it.
right? So phosphorus again keeps shunts where the calcium metabolizes, and ATP, adenosine triphosphate, right? That's energy production. That's phosphorus.
If I
And
can
there's
get
the
it.
phosphate liquid. Tastes like a nasty cough syrup, basically, right?
Yep.
So we take dry rot.
It's not so nasty.
We
There
get
are
you.
worse things.
You'll get used to it. It tastes pretty nasty the first time or two. I usually recommend kind of squirt it past the taste buds, past the tongue. But then after most
Or
of
drink it with a straw. A
oh,
lot of times.
okay.
Yeah, that way it doesn't get on your teeth too.
There you go.
Right.
So a lot of people I've suggested this for get used to it. I mean, you can kind of get over the taste or start craving it as something that we need. So
Yeah.
we can get into it that way. Phosphorus foods you want to lean into. I mean, that's unfortunately it's potatoes, right? It's
Well, lentils are a
okay.
good source of phosphorus. And again, remember, you got to be very careful about where you're getting them from, right? The region
Right.
available. And seafood is usually a good source of phosphorus, right? So if you're
Okay.
eating ocean caught fish, things from the ocean, that's going to help balance it out naturally for you, for sure.
Right. Nice. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, I mean, I think I was first aware because what Dr. Roy Lee used to talk about, the cows in Wisconsin, there's a lot more calcium and magnesium in the soil. So they were kind of calmer, really slow creatures. And you couldn't raise racehorses there because there wasn't enough phosphorus in the soil.
Oh, all
But
right.
in Kentucky, there's a lot of phosphorus in the soil, so they can raise racehorses. So very interesting to look at the regions and where you're at and know whether or not you're getting any of it in your water. So here in Texas, same thing, definitely much more calcium, magnesium rich. So I do add a few drops of that into my water all day.
You're expanding our audience. My daughter's a barrel racer, so
All right.
I'm gonna go give her horse some fast food.
Sure.
Ooh, I don't know about a horse-sized dose of fast food, huh?
Yeah.
You have to buy it by the gallon.
Just get the grass from Kentucky, I guess, is what you need
There
to
it
do.
is. All right, that's good insight.
So that would be something I would keep in the cabinet. But also, I don't necessarily have people supplement K2. I know there's a lot of vitamin D3 K2 supplements out there. And you can get K2 from K1, right? If you eat your your kale and your broccoli. But
Right.
I do think, getting some good healthy eggs and some butter or ghee on a daily basis or sauerkraut is going to give you ample K2, to be able to help make sure you're mobilizing that into the bone. We could talk about cholesterol because I'm sure a lot of people are worried about cholesterol on another one, but
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
not going to be, something I'm worried about. And then oxalates, right? Just moderation. You got to be careful in that.
It's all about moderation, right? Because those are foods that we really need and should have in our diet. I mean,
Yes.
the conundrum, right? Beets dilate the vessels. They'll help keep blood pressure down. It's nitric oxide, that's circulation. But if we go too far, then we get stoned. So, right?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So if we were to wrap this up and put a pin on it, somebody says, "Hey, I got kidney stones." What are we going to tell them to do first and foremost?
Fast food.
Fast
Start getting the
food.
fast food going. Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
Look,
kidney
if you have,
support, probably, right?
right.
Some
Yeah.
form
Yeah.
of kidney support.
Kidney support.
Yeah.
Great supplements for that. If God forbid you had COVID or the vax and kidney was your weakness, then that's going to be an autoimmune attack against the kidney. Supplementally, I'm going to be looking at renatrophin PMG, the protomarvin PMGs are going to rebuild if there was actually call it a viral damage to the kidney. The good news is that it is fixable with the PMGs. So that's if these things have happened ever since you had the vax or you had the virus, that would be a place to consider supplementally is that renatrophin PMG. Otherwise, for most of what we're talking about, it's lifestyle balance. Get the sodas out. That's the wrong source of phosphorus, right? There's a whole nother podcast. And sadly, this is the anniversary of my mom basically died of diet sodas,
Oh, wow.
if you will. So I mean, her kidneys were crashing and they couldn't get it corrected, and she was a lifetimer on she always literally had diet soda under her arm. And so that was a near and dear to my heart subject. I told her 20-25 years before that, where that choice was going to lead, and unfortunately that was fulfilled. So again, just speaking from the heart, if you are a soda person, especially a diet soda person, that is something you're going to want to look hard at making some changes. Those food colorings in there as well are also going to be very stressful on the kidney. Yeah. So we want to chill on the sodas, balance your good fats, get your fish in there, fish oil. Fish oil is good for the brain, good for, baby's development, all that, keeping inflammation down, keeps the calcium in the bones instead of in the soft tissue. So we can stay healthy, vibrant, and young. Those are all, options. High phosphorus foods, as you talked about, maybe a phosphorus supplement. Hydration, we need to drink water. That's another podcast potentially, but good, clean, filtered water, because most municipal waters are going to have fluoride in them. Hopefully, that is changing with the new administration. Hopefully, they're going to get that fluoride out. That was a dental debacle. Another subject we can talk about.
Right.
But anyway, so good, clean, filtered water. We talk about what that looks like, but.
And I think ultimately the takeaway that I always want to remind people is that if you're developing things like this, use that information, learn from it, because it's something that's giving you a sign that something is definitely out of balance in your body. Right. I had a lady who came to me a couple of years ago, and she had to go back I don't know how many times she went to get the lithotripsy. And my heart broke for her, right? Because her life was just not in balance. When we finally got to working with her, we got her in balance. She hasn't had any since. It's been 3 years. And, everything got better because your phosphorus is so needed. Like you said, it's for energy production. It's for circulation. I mean, when something's that abundantly needed in the body, and I'll just throw this in there too, we replace 330 billion cells a day, right? Plus every single one of those cells has a phospholipid bilayer, meaning you need phosphorus and fat to replace 330 billion cells. So the need for it is incredibly abundant. So make sure that you are getting an adequate and minimum source of fats and phosphorus in your diet to be able to keep this in balance. That's my final takeaway.
Right. I want you to thrive so you can be vibrant and keep listening to these fun podcasts, right?
Exactly.
Share with your friends.
Cool. Well, yeah, and keep the comments coming, guys. Thank you so much. We are doing our best to make this better and better. And sounds like we're going to be talking about coronary artery calcification next week a little bit more. And probably we're going to just keep going and keep the comments and suggestions, and we'll get to all eventually.
comment if there's other subjects you'd like to see us rant about. Post that in the comments, so we'll add that to the list.
Cool.
We are going to be laying out the next few, as you said, on Thursday. So if there's subjects that are near and dear to your heart, put them up there so we can include those for you.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Have a good week.
God bless.